My name is Emma, and I'm about to tell you the story of how my sister's cruel words about my financial situation backfired in the most spectacular way possible. This happened just 6 months ago, but it feels like a lifetime when you're living a secret that big. The setup: living two lives. Let me start by explaining my situation. To everyone in my family, including my sister Rachel, I was Emma, the struggling artist. I lived in a modest apartment, drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic, and shopped at discount grocery stores. I wore the same few outfits on rotation and never seemed to have money for the family dinners or vacations they always planned. What they didn't know was that 3 years ago, I had quietly founded a tech startup from my small apartment. While they saw me hunched over my laptop, they assumed I was freelancing for pennies or working on some hopeless creative project. In reality, I was building an artificial intelligence platform that would revolutionize data analysis for Fortune 500 companies. The company, DataMind Solutions, had grown from just me in my pajamas to a team of 50 brilliant minds working across 3 offices. But I had kept everything completely secret. I continued living my modest lifestyle, driving my old car, shopping at the same stores, wearing the same clothes. There were several reasons for this choice. First, I wanted to see how my family really felt about me without the influence of money. Second, I was terrified of people suddenly treating me differently or wanting things from me. And third, I was still processing the fact that my life had changed so dramatically. The girl who used to count coins for grocery money was now worth more than everyone in my extended family combined. My personal assistant, Marcus, handled all my business communications through a separate phone and email system. To my family, I was just Emma with her mysterious computer work. Marcus would call me Ms. Chin in professional settings, but in private, he was more like a friend who happened to manage my increasingly complex financial empire. The wealth wasn't just from salary or even profit sharing. 6 months before this story takes place, DataMind had caught the attention of several major tech giants. The bidding war that followed resulted in an acquisition offer that made my head spin. When the final papers were signed, I found myself with a net worth that officially put me in billionaire territory. But I still shopped with coupons and drove my Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door from 3 years ago. The gathering storm: Rachel's judgment. Rachel had always been the golden child in our family. She married young to a successful banker, lived in a beautiful suburban home, and had 2 perfect children who excelled at everything. She drove a brand new BMW and carried designer handbags that cost more than my monthly rent, or so she thought. Our parents had always compared us, usually with me coming up short. "Why can't you be more like Rachel?" was a common refrain throughout our childhood. Rachel has her life together. Rachel makes smart choices. Rachel knows how to present herself properly. I had learned to let these comparisons roll off my back, especially since I knew something they didn't. But Rachel's attitude toward me had been getting worse over the past year. She seemed to take personal offense at my lifestyle, as if my modest living situation reflected poorly on the entire family. It started with small comments. "Emma, you really should invest in some nicer clothes. That car is becoming an embarrassment. Maybe you should consider a more stable career path." But as months went by, her remarks became more cutting and public. At family gatherings, she would make jokes about my financial situation in front of everyone. "Don't expect Emma to contribute to Dad's birthday gift," she'd say with a laugh that wasn't entirely kind. "We know money is tight." Or, "Emma, maybe you should skip dessert and save the money for groceries." The worst part was how everyone would laugh along with her, as if my supposed poverty was amusing entertainment for family dinners. Even my parents would chuckle and shake their heads, treating my financial struggles like a character flaw rather than a temporary situation. But I endured it all because I had a bigger plan. I was waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth, and I was gathering evidence of how my family really felt about people they perceived as less successful. The picture that was emerging wasn't pretty. Rachel's friends were just as bad. Whenever I encountered them at family events, they would speak to me with a condescending tone that made my skin crawl. "How are you managing, Emma?" they'd ask with fake concern. "Are you getting enough to eat?" They treated me like a charity case, and Rachel never corrected them or defended me. The incident, Public humiliation. The breaking point came during my nephew's 8th birthday party. Rachel had invited her usual crowd of wealthy suburban friends, along with the extended family. The party was held at an expensive indoor play center that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. I arrived in my Honda Civic, wearing jeans and a simple sweater from Target. I had brought a thoughtful gift for my nephew, a coding kit that I knew he would love, since he'd shown interest in programming during our last conversation. But to everyone else, it looked like a modest present from his struggling aunt. The other parents were discussing their recent vacations to Europe, their children's private school achievements, and their latest home renovations. I listened quietly, occasionally contributing when someone asked me a direct question, but mostly just observing the dynamics I had grown so familiar with. Then Rachel's friend Jennifer started talking about a charity drive they were organizing for families in need during the holidays. The conversation naturally turned to discussing people they knew who might benefit from such charity. "It's so important to help those who are less fortunate," Jennifer was saying. "Some people just can't seem to get their lives together, you know?" That's when Rachel glanced at me and made the comment that would change everything. "Speaking of people who need help," she said with a laugh that carried across the entire party area, "Emma here can barely afford groceries most weeks. I keep telling her she needs to find a real job instead of whatever computer nonsense she's always doing." The entire group turned to look at me with a mixture of pity and judgment. Some looked embarrassed for me, others seemed fascinated by having an actual, poor person in their midst to examine. "Oh, Emma," Jennifer said in that sickeningly sweet tone. "Have you considered applying for food assistance? There's no shame in getting help when you need it." Another friend, Margaret, jumped in. "My company is hiring entry-level administrative assistants. The pay isn't great, but it's steady. I could put in a word for you." Rachel was nodding along enthusiastically. "See, Emma? People want to help. You just have to swallow your pride and accept that your current path isn't working." I felt every eye in the room on me. Children had stopped playing to listen to the adults discussing the poor lady who couldn't afford food. My parents were looking at the floor, clearly embarrassed by their unsuccessful daughter being made a public spectacle. But instead of feeling humiliated, I felt something else entirely. I felt calm. Because I knew that my phone was about to ring, and everything was about to change. The call that changed everything. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. I looked at the screen and saw Marcus calling. But this wasn't just any call, this was the call I had been expecting for weeks. "Excuse me for just a moment," I said politely, stepping away from the group that was still discussing my financial situation like I wasn't there. "Emma," Marcus said, his voice carrying a mixture of excitement and professionalism. "I need to inform you that your billionaire status has just gone public. Forbes released their updated list an hour ago, and you're officially listed as the youngest self-made female billionaire in the tech sector." My heart started racing, but I kept my voice steady. "What's the coverage looking like?" "It's everywhere. Wall Street Journal, TechCrunch, CNN Business. They're calling you the secret billionaire and the stealth entrepreneur. Your phone is about to start ringing nonstop with interview requests. The story is trending on social media." I could hear the noise of the party behind me, including Rachel's voice still holding court about my supposed financial struggles. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Marcus, can you send me the Forbes article link? And prepare a statement about maintaining privacy during this transition period." "Already prepared, Miss Chin. Also, your parents and family members have been trying to reach your business line. They've apparently seen the news." I smiled for the first time that day. "I'll handle the family situation. Send me everything you have on the media coverage." As I hung up, I could see people at the party starting to check their phones. The news was spreading fast, and it wouldn't be long before someone connected the dots. The revelation, worlds colliding. I walked back to the group just as Jennifer was saying, "Poor Emma probably doesn't even have a smartphone plan that includes data. Some people just don't understand how to prioritize their spending." Rachel laughed. "She probably still has one of those old flip phones. Emma's always been terrible with money management." That's when Margaret looked up from her phone with a confused expression. "This is weird," she said. "There's a woman named Emma Chin on the news who just made the Forbes billionaire list. Same last name as you, Emma. What are the odds?" The group started pulling out their phones, curious about this coincidence. I watched as one by one, their expressions changed from mild interest to confusion to shock. "Wait," Jennifer said slowly, looking between her phone screen and my face. "This Emma Chin, she looks exactly like." Rachel grabbed Jennifer's phone and stared at the screen. The color drained from her face as she read the headline, "DataMind Solutions founder Emma Chin becomes youngest self-made female billionaire in tech." The photo accompanying the article was from a business conference I had attended 6 months earlier, where I had worn a professional suit and spoken about innovation in artificial intelligence. It was clearly me, but looking nothing like the struggling artist they all knew. "This can't be right," Rachel whispered. "This has to be a different Emma Chin." I pulled out my phone, my very expensive, top-of-the-line smartphone that I had been careful to keep in a basic black case to avoid drawing attention. I opened the Forbes article and handed it to her. "Actually," I said calmly, "it's the same Emma Chin. The one who apparently can't afford groceries." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the children seemed to sense that something monumental was happening and had stopped their playing to watch the adults. Rachel stared at the phone, reading the article that detailed my company's journey from startup to billion-dollar acquisition. It mentioned my background, my education, my vision for the future of artificial intelligence. It talked about my notably private lifestyle and how I had managed to build an empire while remaining completely under the radar. "DataMind Solutions," she read aloud. "Founded 3 years ago by Emma Chen in her apartment." She looked up at me. "Your apartment?" I nodded. "The same apartment where you said I live like a college student." Jennifer grabbed the phone next, scrolling through the article. "It says here that the acquisition deal was worth $1.2 billion, and that you retained controlling interest in the new entity." "That's correct," I said simply. The aftermath, truth revealed the party had come to a complete standstill. Parents were reading over each other's shoulders, trying to understand what was happening. My parents looked like they had seen a ghost. Rachel was still holding the phone, her hands shaking slightly. But you drive that old Honda. You shop at discount stores. You said you couldn't afford to come on the family vacation to Hawaii." "I chose not to come to Hawaii," I corrected. "I never said I couldn't afford it. I said it wasn't in my budget," which was true. My budget for that month was entirely allocated to expanding our European operations. The reality of the situation was sinking in for everyone present. The woman they had been treating as the family charity case was actually wealthier than all of them combined by several orders of magnitude. "Why?" Rachel asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why didn't you tell us?" I looked around the room at all the faces staring at me. Some looked embarrassed, others confused. A few seemed almost angry, as if I had played some kind of trick on them. "Because I wanted to see who you really were," I said honestly. "I wanted to know how my family treated people they perceived as less successful. I wanted to understand what kind of people I was related to when money wasn't part of the equation." The silence stretched on. Jennifer was the first to speak. "Emma, we had no idea. If we had known." "If you had known, you would have treated me differently," I finished. "That's exactly the point. Your kindness and respect shouldn't be dependent on someone's bank account." Margaret was scrolling through more articles on her phone. "It says here that you're planning to donate $500 million to educational programs for underprivileged children. That announcement will be made official next week," I confirmed. Rachel looked like she was about to cry. "Emma, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "You had no idea that I was wealthy, or you had no idea that your behavior was cruel?" I asked. "Because one of those things shouldn't have mattered. The consequences, change dynamics word spread quickly through the extended family and social circles. By the end of the weekend, my phone was ringing constantly with relatives who suddenly wanted to reconnect. Cousins I hadn't heard from in years were calling to congratulate me and suggest we get together soon. Rachel's friends, who had been so condescending just days before, began reaching out through social media and mutual connections. Jennifer sent a long email apologizing for her behavior and mentioning that her daughter was interested in computer programming. Margaret sent a LinkedIn request along with a message about a business opportunity she wanted to discuss. The most telling response came from my parents. After the initial shock wore off, Their first questions weren't about how I was feeling or whether I was happy. They were about whether I was planning to buy a bigger house and whether I might be interested in helping with some financial challenges they had been facing. My father called me 3 times in one evening to ask about investment opportunities and whether I needed help managing my money. My mother wanted to know if I was planning to start a foundation and, if so, whether she could be involved in running it. But the most difficult conversation was with Rachel. She called me the day after the party, crying and apologizing repeatedly. But even in her apology, I could hear the shift in how she saw me. "Emma, I feel terrible about everything I said. I had no idea you were so successful. We should talk about family investments, maybe something we could do together. And the kids' college funds could really use help from someone who understands finance like you do." Even her apology was really a request for money. The new reality. Moving forward in the weeks that followed, I had to make some difficult decisions about my relationships. The experience had shown me exactly who my family and friends really were, and the picture wasn't entirely pretty. Some people, like my Uncle David, actually apologized sincerely and admitted that they had judged me unfairly based on appearances. He said he was proud of what I had accomplished and ashamed of how he had treated me. Those relationships I decided to preserve and rebuild. Others, like Rachel's friends, clearly saw me as a networking opportunity rather than a person they had wronged. Their sudden interest in my company and their children's career prospects made their motivations transparent. Rachel herself fell somewhere in between. I could tell she felt genuinely bad about her behavior, but I could also see that her perception of me had changed entirely. She now spoke to me with a deference that felt almost as uncomfortable as her previous condescension. During one of our conversations, she said something that really stuck with me. "I just can't believe you let us think you were poor this whole time. It feels like you were lying to us." That comment helped me understand that she still didn't get it. In her mind, I had deceived them rather than simply lived modestly while they made assumptions about my circumstances. I decided to maintain relationships with family members who could acknowledge their behavior and genuinely apologize, but I also established clear boundaries. I made it known that I wouldn't be discussing my finances or business decisions with family members, and that any requests for money or investment opportunities would need to go through Marcus and my legal team. The business impact, public success professionally, the public revelation of my wealth had mixed consequences. On one hand, it brought incredible opportunities. I was invited to speak at major conferences, join prestigious boards, and collaborate with other successful entrepreneurs. The media attention also helped DataMind Solutions attract even more high-profile clients. Companies wanted to work with this secret billionaire who had built an empire while flying under the radar. But there were downsides too. Privacy became much more difficult to maintain. I had to hire a security team and move to a more secure living situation. The simple life I had been living was no longer possible. I also discovered that some business contacts I had worked with for years began treating me differently once they learned about my wealth. Negotiations became more complex because people assumed I didn't care about money, which wasn't true at all. Marcus helped me navigate these changes by establishing protocols for different types of interactions. We created systems to separate my personal life from my business interests, and we developed strategies for maintaining the relationships that mattered while filtering out the opportunists. The most rewarding part of going public with my success was being able to launch the educational foundation I had been planning. The program provides coding education and technology access to students from low-income families, something that had been a dream of mine since the early days of DataMind. Lessons learned, character and wealth. Looking back on this experience 6 months later, I've learned some important lessons about wealth, family, and human nature. First, money really does reveal people's true character, but not always in the ways you expect. Some people who I thought were materialistic actually cared more about the person than the bank account. Others who seemed genuine turned out to be primarily motivated by what they could gain from the relationship. Second, living with a secret that big is incredibly isolating. While I had good reasons for keeping my wealth private, it also meant that I couldn't share my successes, my challenges, or my fears with the people closest to me. That isolation was harder than I had anticipated. Third, The way people treat those they perceive as less successful says everything about their values and nothing about the perceived unsuccessful person. The cruelty and condescension I experienced from Rachel and her friends was about their insecurities and prejudices, not about my actual worth as a person. Most importantly, I learned that respect and kindness should never be conditional on someone's financial status. The way Rachel treated me when she thought I was struggling was inexcusable, regardless of what she discovered about my actual circumstances later. Now, when I meet people who don't know about my background, I watch how they treat service workers, how they talk about people with different economic situations, and how they behave when they think no one important is watching. Those observations tell me everything I need to know about their character. The resolution: new beginnings today. I live more openly as a successful entrepreneur, but I've kept many of the habits that served me well during my years of privacy. I still drive a modest car, though it's newer and more reliable than my old Honda. I still shop carefully and think about purchases before making them. The biggest difference is that I no longer hide my success, but I also don't flaunt it. I've found a middle ground that allows me to be authentic while maintaining the values that helped me build my company in the first place. My relationship with Rachel has stabilized into something cordial but distant. She's more careful about what she says around me now, but I can tell she's never really understood why her previous behavior was wrong. She treats my wealth like a personality trait rather than recognizing that her judgment was the real problem. Some family relationships have actually improved. My younger cousin Maria, who had always been kind to me regardless of my perceived circumstances, and I have become much closer. She's now working as an intern at DataMind Solutions, not because of our family connection, but because she's brilliant and passionate about technology. The experience taught me to value authenticity over acceptance. I'd rather have a few genuine relationships with people who see me as a person first than dozens of superficial connections with people who are impressed by my bank account. The moral: true wealth. The real revenge in this story wasn't humiliating Rachel in front of her friends, though I admit there was some satisfaction in that moment. The real revenge was discovering who people truly were and making decisions about my relationships based on that knowledge. Wealth is a tool and a responsibility, but it's not a measure of human worth. The most valuable thing I gained from this experience wasn't the money from selling DataMind Solutions. It was the clarity about what kinds of people I want in my life. I learned that true wealth isn't just about having money. It's about having relationships with people who value you for who you are, work that gives your life meaning, and the freedom to make choices based on your values rather than your circumstances. Rachel thought she was embarrassing me by pointing out my financial struggles in front of her friends. Instead, she revealed her own character and values in a way that changed our relationship forever. The assistant's call about my billionaire status going public wasn't just a professional update. It was the moment when two worlds collided, the world where I was judged by my bank account and the world where I was valued for my contributions and character. In the end, I discovered that I was already wealthy in the ways that matter most. The money was just a bonus. If there's one thing I want people to take away from this story, it's this: treat everyone with respect and kindness, regardless of their apparent circumstances. You never know who you're really talking to, and more importantly, your behavior says everything about who you are as a person. The grocery store cashier might be a secret billionaire, but she also might just be someone working hard to support her family. Either way, she deserves your respect. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well and letting the truth speak for itself.